Hey listeners, this episode is brought to you by EF World Journeys. Today's travelers want more from their vacation. That's why more people are turning to travel professionals to help them explore the world with confidence. For nearly 35 years, EF World Journeys has been the go to guided experiential travel company for leisure travelers who want to learn more about people, places, and cultures around the world. Its brands EF Ultimate Break, EF Go Ahead Tours, and EF Adventures serve everyone from Gen Z to baby boomers and help tens of thousands of US and Canadian travelers every year explore 400 bucket list destinations. EF World Journeys is one of North America's biggest guided group tour companies, and its expert planned immersive itineraries focus on the big moments and little things that make travel and meeting new people so rewarding. It's experiential travel that goes deeper, where every journey builds a connection, inspires wellness, and fuels a lifelong love of learning. EF World Journeys, guided by experts, driven by curiosity. To learn more, go to efworldjourneys.com. Welcome back to the Skift Travel Podcast. I'm Will Slickers, the Director of Video and Audio here at Skift. As we head into Skift Global Forum, happening September 16th through the 18th in New York, the energy here is in full swing. It's our biggest event of the year, and the entire team is focused on bringing you the conversations shaping the future of travel. This week on the podcast, we're sharing a replay of a recent webinar, Online Travel in Flux. Seth Borko and Sarah Kopit sat down with our founding editor, Dennis Shaw, to unpack the major shifts happening across online travel agencies and the broader travel ecosystem. Dennis also brings in unique insights from past Skift Global Forums, where major announcements and industry-defining moments have taken place, to also give some added perspective on what's unfolding now. It's a timely conversation and a perfect lead in to the themes you'll see on stage at Skift Global Forum next week. We hope you enjoyed this replay, and if we don't see you in New York, we'll see you right back here on the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. Today, we're going to talk about all things online travel, but we are also just 2 weeks, 2 short weeks away from Skift's Global Forum. I hope that many of you out there listening and watching today will be there with us in person. So today, here, we're going to preview some of the topics around online travel and maybe a little bit of predict of what we're going to see at the forum. We've got Booking Holdings CEO, Expedia CEO, and maybe a few surprises still yet on stage. We're going to cover topics across AI, online travel, booking, the state of US travel, very interesting, the future of talent, loyalty. But before we jump in and preview all of these topics, a reminder, join us at the Skift Global Forum September 16th through 18th and go to live.skift.com to get your tickets. And also, please drop questions in the chat. Your questions are our favorite to answer, and we love to hear about what is on your mind. So, Dennis, tell us about what you think you're going to hear at the forum.
Sarah, a few things top of mind for me. You mentioned we're going to hear from Booking, Expedia, and Airbnb. So one thing I want to find out from them is how are they going to play with the LLMs, with the ChatGPTs, or are they going to play? For example, Airbnb, Brian Chesky has a close relationship with Sam Altman at ChatGPT. But does Airbnb have to use them as a marketing channel, because they get 90% of their traffic direct? So it would seem to be that they're in a better position than their rivals in terms of they might not have to deal with the LLMs to a great extent.
Well, Dennis, that's an interesting point, because their rivals, it's more like ChatGPT as a competitor to Google, then, is kind of what you're saying, because Airbnb has found a way to somewhat opt out of that Google funnel. It's not that being out of Google has benefits beyond just being out of Google. It also means that maybe you're out of ChatGPT as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of Google, the court decision came down this week, which basically changed next to nothing. There are a few little things that will change, but the travel industry had been holding out hope, that Google would get broken up, that their search monopoly would disappear or be diminished, but it really changed very little. And in fact, Glenn Fogel said a few weeks ago that Google clicks are holding their own. Google, isn't going anywhere for the moment. So this is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
And then Yeah, and then also, what about the Marriotts and the Hiltons of this world? Are they going to strike direct relationships with ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini? And what will that mean for the OTAs? If they lose control of the customer. So that's another thing to watch.
Did you guys watch it was a little bit of an aside, but did you watch the movie on HBO, Mountainhead, with
No.
Steve Carell? It's basically four of like the leading tech giants sitting around in a mountain house, like thinking about basically the end of the world. Can you imagine just being at a dinner party with like Brian Chesky and Sam Altman and I don't know, Zuck and Elon, just basically talking about like how it's all gonna go for us in the next 100 years as humans? I don't know.
I don't know if Zook and Sam will be at the same dinner party, but I'm sorry. I meant Elon. Elon.
Elon.
Yes,
Yeah.
one could dream, right? One could dream. All right, back to travel. Seth, what do you guys got? What do you guys got going on in your AI report? What are we going to see there?
I mean, I think what we're saying is that we've started on this AI topic, and it is such an interesting topic. And I think we want to have a balance between, do we talk about anything but AI? And does anything but AI matter?
Yeah.
I know I'm excited for a lot of stuff to hear. I want to hear about what's happening in loyalty landscape. I want to hear what's happening with credit cards and with banks. I want to hear about the state of the consumer. That to me is a big question mark. And then yes, like I want to hear about what's going on with AI. We on the Skift research side have been working on a report with McKinsey & Co., the consultant firm. We're working on a report with McKinsey about the future of AI in travel. We've spoken to a lot of industry leaders. We've done a lot of research. We're publishing that report in 2 weeks, actually at the Global Forum, and we're going to have some really cool people on stage to talk about it. But to me, this conversation around AI, and especially even agentic AI, is just so critical. And it's one of those things where, well, maybe I'm wrong, but it's one of those things where it feels like we know it will matter. We just don't know how it will matter yet. So I think that's like one of those big open questions that we're trying to answer. And I think that's exactly right. Like, how quickly will is travel even ready for AI? Like, do we have the data and the infrastructure and the people in place? How much AI do customers even want from the
I would
travel
love to
experience?
hear from people listening. Put it in the chat. What are you seeing? Like, what is your experience on the ground? I mean, it's like all we do is talk about AI, but how is it having a real impact in your business at this point? Like, today, the 4th of September, 2025, or is it still kind of in that nascent stage where it's like you can kind of see that it might have an impact, but it's just not happening yet?
One
I
thing
want to hear from the audience. Let me give some stats rather than just ask some questions. Let me give some stats. We do this thing we do called the U.S. Travel Tracker on the Skift research side. We go out, we survey 1,000 American travelers. We say, have you traveled, in the last X period, last couple of months? And if so, would you mind answering some questions for us? It's 1,000 people. It's pretty statistically significant. When we do this, we do it every year. We actually, in case you didn't know, we do it across the globe. We do 5 a year in different regions. We do one of them is the U.S. And we do it every year. And last year we said, hey, have you used any AI, ChatGPT or a similar AI tool to plan your trip? 2024, 13% of American travelers said that they had used ChatGPT extensively to help plan their trip. We just did the survey again last month. It went from 13%, so call it 1 in 10, maybe a little more than 1 in 10, to 30% telling us that they used it extensively. Almost a third of American travelers, and another quarter of Americans said they use it occasionally. So you have nearly half of Americans telling us that they either play around with ChatGPT before booking a trip or they use it extensively. We also did a piece of research on large language models and on Google in particular. We created something we called the Travel AI Visibility Index. So we use 2 partners, Dune 7 and SEO Clarity to look at some Google search results. And so we got a set of hundreds of thousands of travel-specific keywords. We basically worked with these partners to basically search those keywords in Google every single month and see if Google gave us an AI answer or a regular answer. And the answer that we found is that the AI visibility, which is how frequently Google gives you an AI answer to a travel-related keyword, has effectively quadrupled in the last 6 months. So our survey shows consumer AI usage doubling, results within Google quadrupling. I mean, it's still not the majority of searches. It's still like under 10% of searches, but it's growing. So let me just say that I want to hear from our audience. I mean, we're going to explore these on this call and in person, but just to give some stats of what we are seeing out there in the industry, that's why I say it's clear this is the direction we're going. Because what we see from the industry side, from the web scraping side, from the consumer side, is that these AI tools are going mainstream, if not already mainstream. Now, what that means for our businesses, how this changes the economics, if it changes the economics, in my mind, that's actually still a little bit up for debate. But it's clear to me at this point that we are going in this direction as a new form of platform for online travel, search, discovery, booking, planning.
On the other hand,
Yeah, debate me, Dennis. I love it. Tell me I'm wrong.
the question is when. When is agentic AI really coming?
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying no time soon. And Wall Street, it seems to me, is currently wondering, is there an AI bubble? So NVIDIA shares have been dropping in price, and people are saying, well, all these companies are using AI internally, like all the big travel companies that we mentioned are using it, but are they really getting ROI out of it? So is there going to be a move in the other direction when people see that they're not making any money out of it?
Well, I think that's totally valid, by the way, Dennis. I think that and I think in some ways that's analogous to what happened with the web itself, where people said these websites are toys. Where's my ROI? 20 years later, it's obvious now that it was possible to make money on the web. But, again, like
30
these
years
days,
later, Seth.
30, the
Same thing.
most famous. Yeah.
Same thing happened with influencers.
True. Yeah.
When
True.
when am I getting my ROI? And look at them now; they're so important in marketing.
So true. So, and I think that is that key. We've got to get through that hump where people probably will struggle to find an ROI. And I'm waiting for us to write the story about the first traveler who books a trip on AI and gets lost or stranded somewhere because the AI hallucinated an activity or a hotel or something. That'll be a fun story, right?
Yeah. When it happens to you, people out there, send me a note, drop me a line. But yeah.
And you also talked about banks and loyalty. Well, Booking.com just came out with their own credit card. Which,
about time, huh?
Yeah, others have had them. So you get 6% credits when you book a hotel or a short-term rental on the Booking.com app. So it's all about direct bookings, trying to boost direct bookings. And in terms of other loyalty things, we're seeing the B2B business side of like Expedia is going gangbusters in B2B, and they're partnering with a lot of banks who are giving out points for their customers when they book travel. So that seems to be really booming.
Can I ask you a somewhat rhetorical question, Dennis? And I'm a fan of the folks at Expedia. I'm not trying to knock on them. But at the point that you go into B2B travel providers, how is an online travel agency different from a more back-end system like a global distribution system? Like, at what point is there no difference between an OTA and a GDS if they're all doing B2B?
Well, they're not all doing B2B. So
true, but those that are, I suppose, those that
are.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Expedia would say that they're trying to get their B2C business better, in order. So B2C grew 1% in gross bookings in the second quarter for Expedia. B2B grew 17%. But so someone told me, I'm writing a story about B2B, and someone told me, yes, B2B is growing much faster than B2C in online travel, but the opportunity in B2C is much larger.
Much bigger. Yeah.
You know, so if they want to turn into a GDS, good luck with that. They're missing a large opportunity.
Well, I guess they're just going to do both.
Right.
That's what they would say. I suppose what they would say is, well, we'll just do both. We'll be a GDS and an OTA, and we'll have our cake and eat it too.
Right. For now, Booking.com is doing both, but it's predominantly B2C, and it's very profitable, and there's room to grow.
Do you think there's room to grow? I feel like we have seen some normalizations of gross bookings growth. Is that just a more normal environment, or what do you think? What do you make of that, Dennis?
Well, don't they have room to grow in the U.S.? Aren't they underpenetrated in the U.S.? You know, so I'm sure there are a lot of markets in the world where there's room to grow.
That's got to be true too. You're right. I mean, you're right. I guess that is not necessarily greenfield. That is some taken market share from existing players. It's not necessarily. I guess, yeah. There was so much growth from shifting bookings from offline to online, and basically taking market share from agents, or even taking market share from direct and walk-ins. And at least in most, not all the world, certainly in the US, it starts to feel like that opportunity is. I don't know. I mean, there are. I'm about to upset some travel agents saying something about offline bookings, but there are obviously some travel agent bookings. But like, it does feel like the opportunity for booking in the US comes at the expense of Expedia, not at the expense of a hotel brand or a travel agent. In Indonesia, maybe it's a different story, or in wherever it's a different story.
So that's why Expedia is leaning into B2B. So, with the opportunity slowing. So
let's talk about.
One of the things we've seen in our research that I think is interesting, and a big shift has been, and this comes back. Doesn't it always come back to Google? It comes back to Google and some of it's changing the algorithms. But like Glenn said, me and Glenn Fogel on a first name basis. Like Glenn Fogel, the CEO of Book & Hold, said, those Google stick clicks are still coming. I think Google Hotels is still very relevant. And one of the interesting things that we're seeing now is that Google Hotels has actually, in response to some of this antitrust pressure, has not demonetized, but has made it more, let's call it equitable. We see that in our research. And we definitely see more. We did some web scraping research where we looked at Google Hotel search results, and in the Google Hotels has a sponsored results section and an organic results section, classic Google. And in the organic section, the direct hotel website is pretty much always there and always near the top. So Google Hotels has in some ways democratized for direct bookings to the brands. And also, they show a lot more challenger OTAs. And I used to sort of glibly assume that there's really only two OTA brands that matter outside of China. If you include China, there's three that matter. But that's not really true anymore. I think we're seeing some real challenger brands in the online travel agency space as well. So that's one of the things that's interesting to me. And it brings it back to this AI conversation, which I think, Dennis, you were sort of saying, people are rooting, yeah, let's get this court case down with Google. But I actually think that, ironically, Google has slowly, through a million cuts, helped democratize top of the funnel in way more than people appreciate. And ChatGPT and LLMs might actually undo some of that. That's one of my pet theories that I'm playing around with. I can't prove it to you with numbers and data, but I actually think that we're seeing more direct bookings in Google Hotels. We're seeing more challenger OTAs in Google Hotels. And ironically, if Google Hotels were to go away in favor of LLMs, we might see a snapback towards more of the duopoly. So I don't know. I'm throwing that out there for the audience feedback. Tell me why I'm wrong. I love to hear why I'm wrong. You certainly you certainly let me know. So I don't know.
On the other hand, regarding challenger OTAs, Hopper used to be considered, a big challenger OTA, and now they've dropped B2C outside North America and are concentrating on B2B. Like 65% of their revenue, they said this week, is B2B. So they did not benefit from the democratization at Google. which
That's a shame.
also now the pressure is off to democratize because of the court ruling.
It's always an interesting space. I was excited about the Hopper. I would not count Hopper out just yet, personally.
So let's talk about RevPAR Zero. Sounds very science fiction, but
Yeah.
what do you think? Are we actually going to go there, or have we already got there?
I guess it depends on the market, but by some, the measures seem to be that RevPAR has been declining, or at least in the second quarter, has been relatively flat. In some cases declining, in some cases, and I admit a U.S. focused bias, so I haven't looked closely at what the Asia Pacific RevPAR has been, but yeah, I think we're potentially entering a more. I mean, if RevPAR is flatter, we are potentially entering a more competitive era in terms of what do you do? Like, this is the question of filling beds and filling rooms and what's happening in the economy and the state of the consumer. How healthy is the consumer? How much of this is just a seasonality thing, a shift in the calendar, certain holidays fall in different periods and all that comparables, and how much of it is tighter booking windows and customers saying, I'm not booking my trip and, I'm going to wait for a tighter booking window. How much of it is the loss of inbound tourism to the U.S., Sarah? We talk about that. Like, I think it's a big question, and what it will mean for the growth of brands and the growth of OTAs is to me a big open question.
Yeah, I mean, so what does that mean, Seth? As you know, these things are cyclical, right? So the hotels in recent years have been talking about direct bookings. Now, RevPAR Zero, what does it mean? More reliance on the OTAs, probably, and maybe striking some deals with the LLMs for more direct booking.
Or do they offer more discounts inside the context of their loyalty program, right? Closed user group pricing. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I would tend to say yes, Dennis, and agree with you. My colleague, she's not on, but my colleague Pranavi has a different thesis on this, and she thinks that the hotels will use some of their loyalty programs to try and offer discounts or boost occupancy within a direct booking channel. So that would be different from what we saw in past, I won't call it slowdown, but in past tighter performance cycles.
Right.
So, who knows? And you're right. And there's this new thing of AI and LLMs, and maybe there's going to be some AI driven efficiencies, and you can drive bookings at lower distribution costs. And it's ancient curse. May you live in interesting times. We're certainly living in interesting times now, as with everything happening in technology, geopolitics, economy, and how it all is going to play out for travel and these brands.
Speaking of interesting times, one of the things that has been buzzing around my LinkedIn anyway, over the last, I don't know, I think it was a month or so, Wall Street Journal put out a piece about how, workers of a certain age, 50 to 65, if folks are let go, laid off, fired in that stage of their career, they may never work again. And we've seen a lot of, and this is attributed to AI plus ageism, of course, but, we've seen a lot of talk about the state of talent and the state of talent in hospitality, travel, tourism, airlines, but also, so you throw AI into it, and it seems like there are two camps, two main schools of thought. One is that there's going to be this white collar bloodbath, that older workers and younger workers coming right out of college, like there are going to be no jobs for any of these people. And, the whole world is going to come tumbling down. And then there's another school of thought that is that AI is just going to change the jobs and, catapult the economy into kind of this next phase, kind of like how the internet did. It's not going to take away the jobs, it's going to make more jobs. So what do you think? Who's right? Dennis?
I think both will happen. I think there will be an AI bloodbath, but I think AI will also create new jobs. So maybe the bloodbath will be bigger than the new job creation. And
what about in travel specifically?
Well, Well, I guess a lot of the software jobs are in jeopardy,
Yeah.
because you can use AI to write code now. So I think that's an area that's going to get hit.
Vibe code, I believe, is what the kids are calling it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Vibe code.
Vibe coding. Yeah.
I see. So
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm probably going to misquote this because it just came out, but the private jobs numbers came out today, and the, you know, leisure hospitality, they were pretty good. They were one of the few bright spots in that report. And so I don't know if that's a precursor to maybe what is to come, at least for, the sliver of what that report looks at. But
So
I think travel and
get-
tourism might be one of the few places outside of kind of like some of the white collar, or these coding, these very specific, where you can really see like, okay, so now the computer is going to be able to do it. Travel and tourism it's one of those human high touch, in-person
Sarah,
experiences that's going to be a little insulated. Yeah.
did you see the story that kind of went viral on Twitter? And I didn't follow it that closely, but where they use these kiosks to check for self check-in, and the
Oh, yeah.
kiosk was someone in a foreign country, and it created this whole
Yeah.
backlash about
Yeah.
now they're even outsourcing these in-person front desk jobs. Like you thought
Yep.
that you thought that a job like that was not outsourceable because you had to be there physically, and it turns out it kind of is, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But I got to tell you, well, it did, it can be done poorly and rub people the wrong way. There's a piece of me that saw that and said, well, nowadays you order your burger at McDonald's at a kiosk. Like, I don't know. Like, there are some jobs that will, I don't know.
I mean, that's already been going on for a while, pre-Gen AI.
Yeah, totally.
Where there were,
It's not even an AI
Right.
conversation. It's just
Right.
an automation conversation, right?
Yep. But I guess it'll be accelerated.
I did this. I presented some research about job stuff, and we looked at job growth in the travel industry overall and by sector from basically like 1999 to today. So through that first tech bubble. And what we found was net job growth across the entire travel industry. And that was very clearly unlocked by the internet. And if you think about it, I will admit that I was not booking travel in 1999. That wasn't me, but it was just so much harder to figure out stuff. And what was going to be there when you arrived, and how are you going to translate, and how are you going to book a hotel in a foreign country, and all these things that the internet made so much easier. And even we'll give credit to the influencers. Like, people look at influencers in Japan. Japan was a scary destination. Now it's a fun destination because you've seen a million times how to get from the subway from, Tokyo airport to Shibuya crossing and what hotel to stay in. It's made it so much more accessible. It's created so many jobs. And yet travel agents were destroyed. And those were good jobs. And those jobs never came back, ever. And, 20% below 1990 levels of employment. And so I think it's a similar conversation. And back to your original question, which is that, like, it's going to be both. It will probably, if it reduces friction and makes it easier to travel, it probably creates jobs net. But we got to have a lot of empathy. And I think that example of also like outsourcing via your kiosk is a good example of that, of like, it's a really tight rope to walk in terms of doing it. And again, I'm going too big here, but like, I think about what happens with outsourcing of even clothing manufacturing, which has caused a huge backlash politically across the world. Like, it will cost jobs for sure.
Yeah.
And even if it net creates jobs, we have to be really careful with managing how that job loss is handled politically by our customers, by our brands. Otherwise, you will get blowback, even if net you're creating economic growth and jobs. So I think that's an important lesson from the last 30 years.
And there's that old thing called climate change that could impact travel demand as well. So I'm sure
that's right.
I'm sure
That
we'll
old
be talking
chestnut.
about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any
Just
questions from the
yeah,
audience?
let
I love audience questions, and I feel like when we take questions, it encourages more. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat. Um, should we start with this one, Jay Shabbat? I know that
oh,
guy.
yeah, we
Well,
know
we'll go
him.
to some LinkedIn users, but he says, I heard one economist say the economy is now divided into 3 types of jobs: people making, people caring, and people thinking. And AI will pressure the thinking jobs most.
Yeah.
Leisure and hospitality is care, taking care of guests. Interesting. Interesting.
I think that, yeah, it's, when I was thinking about the self check-in quandary, I mean, like everything else, it depends. It's the annoying answer. But, for like a business traveler, like if I'm going to a conference and I'm going to a Marriott, yeah, I don't need to talk to a person. I'm going to a hotel. I'm going to stay in a room. I'm going to sleep there. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to leave. I don't need to talk to another human. But if I'm going on vacation to a far off destination and then I don't, I want to talk to somebody. I want to see if I can get my room on the highest floor. And I want some tips, and I
Never
want to
works for
know
me.
what's going on. Oh, it works for me, Seth. See, you're doing it wrong.
We'll talk about that. Tips
We'll
for high
talk later.
floors in the chat, please.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All of you out there, what's going on? So, or like I think about my parents when they travel. I mean, they probably couldn't use kiosk to. They wouldn't be able to get into their room. Sorry, mom and dad, they're not watching. So younger travelers, older travelers, like people that are not just like your business traveler in and out, they do this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
You still need people. That's the caring.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I even gave the example of McDonald's kiosk to order a burger. That would not fly at a fine dining restaurant, right? So context
Right.
matters. But the other
Yeah.
question is, if these entry level jobs are going away, where does where if you can't get your start at your local hotel, how do
Yeah.
you ever get your start in Four Seasons? And I mean, I know there's other paths and stuff, but that's an interesting one. Let's get a question. Can I go to the next question, Sarah? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go for it. Yep. Absolutely.
Debbie Hindle. Thank you for commenting, Debbie. She asks, which travel organizations do you think are using AI now in the most interesting way? What do you think, Dennis?
I don't
Put
know.
you on the spot.
I can't really pick out a most interesting. I mean, Expedia and Booking.com are both, they all have their chatbots and travel planners. They don't have a lot of adoption. I really can't come up with the most interesting. What about you guys? Yeah.
The story that I liked the most, or it kind of really clicked for me. I mean, it was a while ago. It seems rather basic, but it was actually from Brian Chesky. He was telling me it was maybe a year and a half ago. And it's funny how far we've come, because I hadn't even thought about this a whole year and a half ago. And now it just seems like, oh, of course. But, he was saying that AI is really helping them with customer or guest kind of questions and complaints. And it's not that the chatbot will be able to answer your question. It does not. I can tell you, like, I've tried to have that, it never works. It's like, it's always just get me to the representative. But he said, when people call with issues, you think that your issue is unique, but it's not. Like, there are like 25 basic scenarios that happen, and we know what they are. And so when you have this like log, or you have all of this information about every single problem that has ever happened at Airbnb, and what is the best like outcome, or what is the best way to fix it. So you have a human who is able to, take which one of the 25 scenarios that we absolutely know it probably is going to be, and, the most similar issues, what was the best outcome, how did they fix it? And so then you present those, 4 different outcomes to the human, And that helps that human being. You couldn't possibly have them look through all of that information, but AI can deliver it to them instantly. So it's stuff like that I think is really helpful and would really allow a customer service facing business like Airbnb is with their guests, do their job much better.
And I think that a lot of the great AI use cases today are on the operational side of things, not on the consumer facing side of things. I'm paraphrasing, I'm sort of stealing, but Marilyn Markham, she's the vice president responsible for AI and automation at Amex GBT. I think she's a really great thinker in this space. I've interviewed her a couple of times. And I think she said this, I think I'm attributing the quote correctly, but she basically likened some of these AI tools to either middleware, like in between, or to translators. And she uses them a lot operationally, or sees use cases for them operationally, in terms of how many Excel spreadsheets are being emailed from one department to another, from one business to another, from one revenue manager to an OTA. That is a great use case, and people are starting to develop tools to do that. And she also talks about generative AI as a translator from a customer coming in with this very emotional issue and translating what they are saying in natural text into, just like Sarah says, into a more machine-driven one of 4 options and one of 8 solutions kind of thing. And those are cool use cases. I would also call out, and we're not trying to do too many plugs, but Sarah and I do host a podcast. I actually think this was going to air on our podcast. So if you're listening to the podcast, thank you. But we did a podcast episode with Palantir, and they actually have launched some hotel and even airline tech services. They're a tech company, sort of defense contractor, sort of not anymore. And they've done some really cool AI stuff as well on the back end, again, on the operational side, in terms of kind of bringing together a whole lots of stuff. That's what they do really well, is they bring together stuff, pricing data, reviews, operational stuff, and trying to generate insights out of it. And so, some of that's reputation management, some of that is revenue management, some of that is stuff like that. I think that there are some cool vendors and tech companies, and I'm sure now that I say that, I'll get hate mail from a million other hotel tech companies saying, but we do that too. We have an AI powered reputation management platform. I'm sure they're out there. Actually, I know they're out there, but that was the one that came to mind. So forgive me, my other friends in hotel tech space, but that's an example that comes to mind.
Seth, you never get hate mail, so forget about it.
Well, rarely, until I encourage it like that, right?
So here's another one from a LinkedIn user. May you remain anonymous. Hi, Seth, Sarah, and Dennis. Wondering if you could talk in more depth about the short-term and the long-term impact of AI and agentic AI on the booking funnel. Do we think AI is going to be more inspiration, or will it start to gain traction lower in the funnel?
Well, that all depends on what role the LLMs want to play in the booking funnel. Do they want to control the customer? Do they want to handle the booking themselves? Or do they just want to outsource it to the hotels or to the OTAs? So, it would be more top of the funnel if they're going to play a more hands-off role. But if they want to be the next Expedia or the next Booking.com and build that infrastructure in, then they're going to control a lot of the funnel.
I think the top of the funnel is arriving very soon, if not already, to be honest with you. I think that's what our survey does. I mean, I play. Yeah. Do you ever play around with it? I go into ChatGPT sometimes in a destination I'm going, I'll say, give me a 3-day itinerary. I actually do it for fun. I sometimes give talks. And if I'm giving a talk in, say, Richmond, Virginia, I will say, give me a 3-day itinerary for Richmond, Virginia. I'll put it up on the screen and I'll say, you guys live here. Is this a good itinerary that you would recommend to a friend? And the majority of the times it is, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. People plan and are inspired to travel in many, many, many different ways. And usually it's an amalgamation of all of them. So I don't think that we lose the need for brand advertising or influencer marketing or anything really, right? Like
it's almost like
I still read magazines every once in a while, not many.
Friends and family will still play a role.
Huge role. Your friends come back, they post on Instagram, and you say, oh man, I want to go to country X. And then the role that a Lonely Planet guidebook might have played, where you then flip through it to get a little more detailed, concrete inspiration of actually what there is to do, I think an LLM probably already does that. In fact, we know that TripAdvisor has baked LLMs into many of its reviews and destinations. So the answer to me is top of funnel is probably here already.
Yeah, I would agree. I do the exact same thing, Seth. It's almost like it's just an additional toy, an additional thing to play with when you're planning your trip. But the top of the funnel one that I really think about is Gemini. And just because, I'm surprised that who said that clicks weren't going down again?
Glenn Fogel or Dennis.
Yeah.
Glenn
So
Fogel,
Glenn Fogel via Dennis, great. So I just, even when you're searching in Google, or when I'll just say me, even when I'm searching in Google, it's like I don't have to click on anything anymore. It just serves it right up. It depends upon how deep you're trying to get, and, how much information you need. But if it's just a simple query that I normally would have gone to Google, got the results, clicked on it, found my answer, now Gemini just gives you the answer right there on the Google platform without any clicks. So I don't know. I agree.
For the bottom of the funnel, I think it will take a while. It will take a long time to get there because I assume anyone on this call knows, but maybe not. I'll just say, rather than assume, what happens when you assume, rather than assume, I'll just say the plumbing behind a travel transaction is incredibly complicated. It always has been. It probably always will be. There's no panacea for that. That's why we're in business, all of us, right? And so that's not going away, and that is complex, and that is job security. But there are different types of travelers, right? I would draw the analogy between the word is the same, an AI agent and a travel agent. The key word is agent. There are people who like to book their own trips. They think it is fun. They want to get the best deal. They want to get just so. And that person will need a list of 100 hotels that they can go through and read every single review for. And that's fun for them. It's a hobby that's not going away. There is a person who calls up a travel agent, whether it's a corporate traveler and a corporate travel agent, or whether it's a luxury traveler or whatever, and says, I trust you. You've got good taste, right? What will the taste of each of these different individual LLMs be is an interesting question. But this travel agent is someone I work with. They've got good taste. They understand what I want. Maybe it's a business trip and taste doesn't matter. I want to just sleep. For the love of God, get me a sleep somewhere I can stay and get to the airport and do it for me. And that desire to do it for me will probably at some point be done by an AI agent. I don't see why it wouldn't be. Now, how the plumbing will work, how the economics will work, will we trust the AI agents at that level? What will the different taste of those different AI agents be? If I say book it for me and they put me in a motel, I won't name a brand, but a motel, I will be upset. Just like if my travel agent did that to me. But we still use travel agents and there is a level of trust. So
in other words, there will no be winner take all,
In other words, what's old is new again, just in a different form, right? History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Yeah. But there is no winner take all. I don't think there could ever be a winner take all in the travel industry.
Right.
$10 trillion across 190 countries. Plus, how could there ever be a winner take all?
A lot of people expect there to be, though. So
we're gonna go back to something that we just talked about. Another LinkedIn user asks, you referenced an interesting trend regarding challenger OTAs. What characteristics do the seemingly successful ones have in common?
Well, they're disrupting the businesses of the incumbent OTAs. Now, I'll take Hopper. There was a time that Hopper was making a lot of its money off of fintech services, guaranteeing your booking or things like that. So that was a challenge to Expedia and Booking who aren't in it. So yeah, do something new and do it well.
I think that's exactly right, Dennis. I also think I just set Also, did I say 10 trillion or 10 billion? Because I hope I said trillion. It's not a $10 billion. But different countries and different markets have different needs. But some of the most successful challenger brands that I think of are specialists in a certain part of the world or a certain type of travel, right? And experiences, OTA, a short-term rental, OTA, Airbnb. Make My Trip in India, which really knows its Indian market really well. Traveloka in Indonesia, which, by the way, I don't know why we don't talk about it more. 300 million plus people, a huge growing market. So one of the things, we did a whole report a while ago about Make My Trip and how it's been so successful. And it's because they're hyper localized and they know their market really, really well. One of that thing meant that there are dozens of official languages in India and even more that are kind of unofficial. And they spent a lot of time translating their app into all those languages so that if you were in a tier 2 or 3 city in India, you could book it in your local, however you felt most comfortably. I think one of the interesting things is that with AI, that kind of level of translation and localization will probably be fairly trivial. So in some ways, AI will create more challengers. In other ways, I actually think it might have this other effect, which is like if you built a great brand in your market by connecting with building local supplies, translating into local languages, knowing your local markets, that was really hard to reproduce. If AI can just translate Expedia or Booking into 500 languages and get every regional dialect and language group in the world, again, like I said, Google has, I think in some ways, actually democratized travel, and LLMs, where you only get 2 paragraphs with an answer, might de-democratize. I don't know the opposite of de-democratizes. But we won't, so there's a lot of dynamics. I think the ones that have done well, I would also call out loyalty and brand. This is a consumer business. The brand is key. Hopper for a long time had a fun brand, still do have a fun brand, the Rabbit and the gamification. eDreams eDreams of Digio has built a loyalty program around discounts. Make My Trip has also built a loyalty program, Make My Trip Black. Expedia is obviously doing the same with One Key. So I think brand, loyalty, value, and discounts, localization, knowing your market, those are all great ways to succeed, and they are all much, much, much easier said than done.
Airbnb was a great example of a challenger brand. It opened up a whole new market. Previously, people only thought of renting out second homes. With Airbnb, you could rent out your apartment when you were on vacation. It opened up a whole new market.
And the other piece of it is the economics, because it turns out the economics of that were great, because it turns out the housing market is actually quite a big market, and they were tapping into the housing market and charging 15. By the way, big changes in how Airbnb charges its fees, but charging 15%, which they just made that change. I think that was an inevitable change. There's huge economics in accommodation bookings that doesn't quite exist in flights or campsites or airlines or whatever.
So here's another one from our friend Jay, which we haven't talked about yet, but I think is very, very important, and that is regulation. So Jay says, regulation matters a lot. AI can already fly a passenger plane without a pilot. Drones, we've seen that in the military, but won't happen for decades, if ever, or will it? So regulation. I love talking about this one. And one of the things that I think is really important, or we're seeing right now, it's not regulated at all, which is so interesting. Like, we are really seeing AI in the wild. And I'm sure most of you who have, who read, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, there's been a lot of stories just recently about some of the ways that AI has kind of gone tragically wrong for a lot of people recently. This isn't a travel related story, but just with, prompting, there was a murder suicide, delusion, like all of that like strain of thing. And I think that the story, I can't remember, I think it was in the Times yesterday, of how, like, psychologists and sociologists, how the chatbots speak to humans and what's happening in our brains, and and what happened when ChatGPT it was like less sycophantic. I think I'm saying that right. The 5 ChatGPT 5, the new was
Yeah.
less,
Less.
it was
People hated
less
it.
like, oh, you're right. Oh, you're right. That's a fantastic answer. And people hated it, wanted it back, but how it plays with the human brain. And I do think, as Jay points out, I think we're living in a time that we very well may look back on and say, can you believe that in 2025, like, there
We
were
let
no
AI do that.
guardrails?
Yeah.
Yeah, that we let it do it, that we let it just tell us anything that we wanted to hear. So I do think that regulations are coming. I think some of the AI companies are actually asking for them. This is, again, the conversation that I would like to be in with Sam Altman and Zuck and Elon, just about like how humanity, like this much broader question, like how humanity is being impacted.
Well, and I agree with you, Sarah. I would add, I would sort of answer this question with a bit of a question. And Angie Graves left this comment on our LinkedIn, and she said, it feels like startups and smaller players are able to move much faster in AI than mid or large scale companies. Why do you think that is? And how can larger organizations keep pace? We'll pull that up in just a second. And I think the answer is regulation. The reason why these small companies are moving faster is damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. They're taking customer data, they're dumping it into random stuff.
Great
And the
thing.
and the biggest companies are afraid of doing that because they don't want the reputational risk. And there is no regulation. So theoretically, they could do it, but they are aware that they are self-regulating and they are putting these governance procedures in place. So when we talk about in the upcoming McKinsey report, is they're putting these governance in place. In some ways, they are slowing themselves down, but I'm not actually sure that's a bad thing, especially if you want to have a brand that's going to last for 100 years. And so it's this interesting dynamic where if you don't move fast enough, you get outcompete and become a dinosaur. But if you live long enough, you will see your brand come through with the strength to. So I think that question about why are startups moving faster, why are smaller players moving faster, is directly tied into the regulation, and directly tied into the regulation piece.
And they don't have the legacy businesses to protect.
Well, true. You're right. There is so much more of it. Their data is cleaner, probably because their data is smaller and because they started collecting their data in the 21st century instead of in the 1980s, and they don't have to clean up all that. So there's actually many, many, many reasons why they're moving faster. Smaller data sets, cleaner tech stacks, less tech debt. No worry, they don't have to protect legacy businesses. There's many, many reasons why, but I do think that regulation is a big piece of it. A lot of these companies are afraid of the unintentional harm or damage that could come from putting AI out in the wild in their customer base instead of in a $0 brand, in a $100 billion brand.
Well, remember what was it, Air Canada?
Air Canada.
Yeah.
Wait, for our tell our listeners, Sarah.
It's been a while since I read this one, but I believe their chatbot gave the wrong answer from the manual, or from I think it was just the terms and conditions, and they lost. It wasn't a huge amount. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but but the precedent that was set was that if you bring ChatGPT or you use that on the back end in your company's chatbot, you are going to be held responsible for the information that it spits out.
Which is true of your human customer service agents who also make mistakes.
Right.
I've called, I won't name the airline, and gotten bad information from a customer service rep. And then you call them back and they have no idea what you're talking about. And there's no recording. And so I don't know, it can happen. Do we want to do one more question?
Yeah, let's do one more. Yeah.
AI can drive, Larry Rabach, I hope I got that right, says AI can drive traffic, but what are hotels doing these days to convert more of that into direct bookings? My answer to that question, Larry, would be they're doing exactly what they did in the past. I mean, the way you convert direct, in my opinion, is the same as it's always been, which is value. It's hard to win direct on the first booking. It's a lot easier to win direct on the second booking. And loyalty programs, value for money, good customer service, clear communication, clear expectations. To me, that's what it's all about. The basics don't change, in my opinion. Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
All right. So that is going to wrap up most of what we're doing today, but I have one more question for Dennis. So Dennis is the founding editor of Skift, has been here since the beginning. Like I said, right up at the top, we have Skift Global Forum coming up the 16th through the 18th here in New York City. Dennis, what are some of your favorite moments going back to the beginning from Skift Global Forum? Can you give me a couple?
I can give you a couple. So I have, for example, in 2017 at the Skift Global Forum, our former hotel reporter, Deanna Ting, interviewed the CEO of Wyndham, Jeff Bellotti, and she sort of badgered him with saying that, but Wyndham is so uncool. How do you deal with that? And Bellotti, instead of just like dodging the question, kept going back to that refrain over and over during the interview. We're uncool because of this, or he embraced the uncoolness. He acknowledged that some of its sub-brands could perhaps use a refresh, but Wyndham embraces its reputation for reliability and comfort rather than chasing friends. Our headline was, "Why Being Uncool Works for Wyndham."
Yeah. It was like Volvo, botsy but good, right?
That's right. Reliability.
Yeah.
There you go. If you want another favorite one was 2014 when we held the forum in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And there's a founder, Nick Gray. He founded the company called Museum Hack, which runs irreverent tours of museums for people who don't like museums. They're fantastic. So the title of his talk was Creative Chaos. And he talked about how he and his best friends took a repositioning cruise to Europe somewhere, and they took over the entire cruise. They published their own newsletter. They handed out trophies for the best dancer in the lounge and the most creative cabin door decoration. They had their own gang signs, which all the passengers started using. It was hilarious, but it was all about the potential about how you could change the guest experience with a little creativity. So those were a couple that I loved.
Good time. So again, September 16th through 18th, Skift Global Forum. If you want to see some of the stuff in person, come and join us. Get your tickets now. Here's a QR code, and it'll bring you right there. Make it all easy for you. So Seth, Dennis, I will see both of you in a couple of weeks in person. And thanks everybody for watching and listening today.
Hey listeners, this episode is brought to you by EF World Journeys. Today's travelers want more from their vacation. That's why more people are turning to travel professionals to help them explore the world with confidence. For nearly 35 years, EF World Journeys has been the go-to guided experiential travel company for leisure travelers who want to learn more about people, places, and cultures around the world. Its brands EF Ultimate Break, EF Go Ahead Tours, and EF Adventures serve everyone from Gen Z to baby boomers and help tens of thousands of US and Canadian travelers every year explore 400 bucket list destinations. EF World Journeys is one of North America's biggest guided group tour companies, and its expert planned immersive itineraries focus on the big moments and little things that make travel and meeting new people so rewarding. It's experiential travel that goes deeper, where every journey builds a connection, inspires wellness, and fuels a lifelong love of learning. EF World Journeys, guided by experts, driven by curiosity. To learn more, go to efworldjourneys.com.